Moving now to another angle on your business. I mean, you're here, you've been here for a long time. Why is, it seems to the layman, so many private airlines seem to be running their business out of Geneva or out of Switzerland, or is that just a misconception that I have? What is it that's attractive about here?
I think it's one of the things that's always been attractive about Switzerland is that it's quite stable.
Yeah.
In terms of employment law, it's predictable. And frankly, there's been an abundance of clients as well. Typically, the people that are going to buy a business jet or charter one are going to be in places like Zurich or in Geneva, where things like being able to go to multiple places in one day, or where discretion becomes absolutely essential. These are all important elements, and many of the clients that we both have in this region need that sort of assurance. But as far as Switzerland is a good place to have a company, it always has been, continues to be. Obviously, the biggest challenges are the strength of the Swiss franc. I think were it not for the fact that today, the Swiss franc against the euro is very, very stable. My company particularly would have great difficulty surviving, particularly with the type of businesses we do here in Geneva.
Do you have a different perspective, or you share that view?
Well, I think things like everything, things change over time. And if you looked at Switzerland's market position 5 years ago, even, I think we were the fourth largest fleet in Europe. And looking at the population differential between the size of Switzerland versus the countries we're competing with, that was amazing.
Yeah.
In the last 5 years, that's been eroded significantly because there have been opportunities in other jurisdictions within European continental mass. Isle of Man has come up tremendously. Malta has become a big player, and the challenges of the Swiss franc and the high labour cost here have also led to a number of companies moving out of Switzerland operationally, although they'll keep their head office here potentially.
Very significant companies.
Yeah, very significant ones. So they moved to places like the UK. UK treated as a low cost place of doing business, for example.
It's absolutely correct, though, and were it not for the fact that we have a very high technical or maintenance component here in Geneva, you would look at TAG Aviation and say that trend is exactly the same as Greg describes.
Okay. But so the fact that it's a small country has not a lot to do with it, because a lot of your business is coming in from outside. This is just a very convenient hub because of all the other things that, for example, the banking sector and other companies and industries say that Switzerland is stable, it's efficient, etc., etc. Yeah.
It's the nature of the clients here.
Yeah, I think Geneva as a destination, for example, still remains strong.
Yeah.
It is the second busiest business aviation airport after Le Bourget in Paris, which again is amazing. But there are a number of reasons why these high net worth individuals and companies want to come here.
Sure.
They've got their banking relationships here, and a lot of it's for leisure as well. This is the gateway to the Alps, and a lot of these people are coming to their holiday destinations in the winter season.
Yeah, I think Geneva is quite unique. If you were to look at a city of 250,000 people anywhere, whether it be Europe or the United States, and look at the typical population of business jets, it would probably be 2 or 3% of what we see in Geneva. It's a very unique area.
Let's just go a little bit more into some of the specific factors. I mean, we're talking about an industry with very high fuel costs and in a country with relatively high labour costs. I mean, how do you manage that kind of business where the indications are that fuel costs are not going to go down dramatically in the next few years? In the way in which you manage the issues to do with these, a very large component of your cost is already in the upper echelons. How do you see the future in that area?
It's as hard as it may be to believe this, fuel cost is a relatively small element of what's important in our business.
So tell us what's important.
Because a business jet flies significantly less than an airliner, then the actual most important element is the cost of capital associated with a business jet. And for that reason, elements like fuel or labor costs for pilots become less important. The issue is whether the potential buyers or charterers have a need. It's driven by need.
Yeah, I see.
Absolutely. I mean, generally, the model that we work on is that fuel cost is passed on directly to the owner of the asset. Yeah, and at the end of the day, yeah, it is a significantly smaller percentage. If you ask Harry, 30% of his
being Harry
Homeister Swiss, yeah, I mean, 30% of his cost is fuel.
Yeah, and he was saying also the tax component is huge.
For a business jet owner, it may be as little as 5%.
I see.
So not significant.
Fuel will never change our business. The economic climate is what changes our business.
Yeah. Now, I mean, just I guess for small boys playing around with airplanes and trains, it's always great fun. But tell us a bit about the logistical challenges. You've got these jets, they're in hangars here, not far from where we're seated, but they're flying around the world all the time. What are sort of the nightmare scenarios of having things in the wrong place, or is it much simpler for you compared with the schedule carrier? Rob, you're smiling, so you must have some stories. You must have some stories
Again,
without being indiscreet.
It's a business that's just entirely different from the airlines.
It is.
Ours is one of managing a great deal of complexity to be able to operate an airplane any place in the world. Experience plays a huge part.
But give us some insights into what complexity means. A man like you who's been in the business a long time, that's a simple word to say, complexity, but just give us a little insight into what that means.
A simple trip would be that if an airline is going from here to Mumbai, as an example, they do that every day. They plan that route probably a year in advance. They flew it on a test basis probably for quite some period. They have all the elements of the service ironed out before they ever actually even start operations. We get a call today, and we need to go to Mumbai in 3 days from now. And by the way, we're supposed to deliver a level of service that far exceeds first class on the scheduled airlines. So in order to do that, it requires experience, it requires managing on the spot a high level of complexity. How do you get landing permits? How do you make certain you have access to catering? Will there be fuel there? What about transportation on the ground? And you have a very short period of time to plan it, as opposed to an airline that probably plans a year in advance.
I see. Greg, you've got
a couple of examples. Yeah. About a year ago, we did the first commercial flight to Antarctica. Yeah. We left out of Geneva. We did a couple of stops on the way down through Africa and left Cape Town and flew to an ice runway on the Antarctic continent.
How long does that take?
The overall trip was, we went there and back, I think, in 3 days, all the way back to Geneva. And of course, there's very little of what you need on Antarctica. I mean, having said that, we landed at Troll Station, which is a Norwegian base, and the runway was fully certified by the Norwegian CAA, had runway lights, the whole 9 yards on it. But we took, for example, a full set of spares of tyres in the belly of the aircraft, just in case.
But for the uninitiated, when you say a full set, I mean, how many tyres are there on an airplane like that?
And it was a BBJ, so we're fairly lucky. There's only 4 tyres.
Only 4 tyres,
yeah.
Okay.
But for example, they'd had an unpleasant experience the year before with a G4, which landed and burst all its tyres on landing, and then to get a full set of tyres for a G4 meant hiring another airplane to fly down.
And we have things called flyaway kits, which is what he's describing, which an airline would never have. They wouldn't want to carry the weight.
But a flyaway kit is what?
A flyaway kit is something that it's a kit that has some of the most common parts that you might need if you had a breakdown in the field. Yeah. Airlines have their parts depots right there, wherever they're serving. In our case, we need to carry it with us.
You physically carry that on the plane?
Yeah, it's relatively small parts, but and you have to have a means by which, if you do end up with a tactical problem, how are you going to solve it? And in some of these remote locations, as Greg describes, it's quite a challenge.
So yeah, I mean, another example, we were doing a series of flights from a place called Anadyr, which is the Pacific coast of Russia, back to Moscow.
So sort of Vladivostok and going up there somewhere.
Well, right, far on the right-hand side. I mean, what would have been Kamchatka on the risk board, and we flew there the first time, and of course the airplane froze overnight, and we need to de-ice. One of the most important things to do to an airplane is to de-ice the wings, and they didn't have any de-icing fluid. So what did we use? We used vodka. Right?
Okay. You're not making this up.
I'm not making this up.
It's quite effective.
It is very effective.
So you heard what the vodka on the airplane.
Well, no, but local stocks,
literally on the
local stocks
airplane.
of vodka. But, that's not hard to find in Russia.
Yeah,
So
no.
Perhaps you weren't popular with the locals, though.
well, the engineers lying under the wing, trying to catch it. But after that experience, we the guy wanted to do a series of flights, so we absolutely insisted to have de-icing fluid on the base. So he arranged for the Russian Army and Air Force to fly up by helicopter a huge tub or vat of de-icing fluid. So from then on, we were good to go.
So I can imagine that. When you finish your career as executives for airlines, you can dine out on all these wonderful stories that you've been telling us today, because they're really beyond belief.
There are many colorful stories.
Many colourful stories.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.